And you're stuck with me twice because it was a busy year for me in research. Along with my colleague, Kathy Davis, and one of the physicians at our Child Advocacy Center, Megan Letson, we also conducted a study over the last year looking at compassion satisfaction, burnout, and traumatic stress in child advocacy centers. And what we know, right, is that we get inundated with these kind of self-care mantras when we come to these trainings, but we know it's because helping professions are particularly vulnerable to the detrimental effects of exposure to trauma in our professional lives, in our personal lives. And we really wanted to look at how that impacts a child advocacy center specifically. And so what we did was use the professional quality of life, the ProQual scale, to measure what that looks like. And we wanted to identify protective and risk factors that may contribute to compassion satisfaction, burnout, and secondary traumatic stress in this population. So it's really that first bullet that we're focusing on. So what we did is partnered with the National Center for National Children's Alliance and Helper listservs, and we distributed the ProQual measure to them. And so we asked them to send the link via survey. And so what we wanted to look at was how the ProQual was being measured. And just if you're not familiar with the measure, the higher the compassion satisfaction, the better. The lower the burnout, the lower the secondary trauma, the better. And those are the two kind of pieces that make up compassion fatigue. After survey completion, what we had was provided participants with direct feedback regarding their scores. We also provided them links with additional information as far as stress management and work-life integration and balance.
So some of the independent variables that we looked at were just region, profession, race, gender, and then our outcome measures for the study were the 3 ProQual scales: compassion satisfaction, burnout, and secondary traumatic stress. And then below you can see some of the statistical analysis that we completed as well. In looking at the results, so we had 1,108 people respond to our survey. There were a total of 885 individuals who fully completed the ProQual measure. Those who did not fully complete the measure were excluded from analysis. Our mean age was 42.1 years, 85% were female, and roughly half provided on-call services. This slide shows the breakdown of the participants by their profession, and as you can see, participants represented all MDT member roles, with medical professionals and forensic interviewers, and those with multiple professions as those with the largest groups of participants. This is a map broken down by geographic region. So to maintain anonymity, we asked participants only to identify their region and not their state or city. As you can see, the sample was geographically diverse, with the most responses coming from the South Atlantic and East North Central regions. We also asked participants to select the number of years that they've been working in the child abuse profession, and that's represented on this graph. The x-axis is the number of years in the field. The y-axis is the number of participants. Participants were diverse in terms of the number of years they've been working in this field, and highlights that people in various stages of their careers completed the survey. This table shows the overall mean ProQual scores for the study population. So the mean T-score for all 3 scales is 50. You can see that the overall mean scores were average for compassion satisfaction, high average for burnout, and then in the top quartile for secondary traumatic stress. Here we have the mean compassion satisfaction scores by profession type, keeping in mind that the higher the compassion satisfaction scores, the better. So child welfare workers had the lowest mean compassion satisfaction score compared with all other professions. In contrast, victim advocates had the highest compassion satisfaction score. When we look at burnout by profession, we can see that CPS workers had the highest burnout. Law enforcement had significantly higher burnout scores than victim advocates, and prosecutors had higher burnout than both victim advocates and admins. This table shows the mean secondary traumatic stress scores by profession. Again, child welfare workers had the highest mean STS scores in the 94th to 95th percentiles, while administration had the lowest in the 96th percentile. Of note, though, all professions had mean scores which were greater than the 90th percentile. Some other findings, any professional who provided on-call services had a significantly higher burnout than those who did not. Females had higher secondary traumatic stress scores than males. And then when looking at mean scores by region, there were no significant differences. Actually, well, I'll skip that part. In this final model, we wanted to look at the unique contribution of each variables. So holding all variables constant, child welfare workers had the lower compassion satisfaction and higher burnout when we compared it with other professions. Holding other variables constant, profession does not have any significant impact on secondary traumatic stress. In terms of our limitations, it's really, we're not sure how many people actually completed this survey because people had the option to just not answer all of the questions. And so it's possible that those who did not participate or chose to end the survey were most unaffected or affected by these variables. In terms of our next steps, we also asked participants to answer 5 free text questions for us. And we're in this process of analyzing this qualitative piece of data with the hope being that that qualitative analysis will help us to inform future interventions that we can use with folks who work in this field. Thank you.